It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. In a recent advanced class, I had a lot of the students asking me about the proper way to use spikes. Now, this was interesting to me because I thought spikes were kind of self explanatory. For me, a spike has always meant when we have some unknown work that we need to research, or when new work becomes inserted, or when things happen that cause us to kind of fall off track. But I learned pretty quickly that many people didn't know how to properly use spikes, or they didn't know what a spike was for, or they either have called it something else or never heard of it, or thought it was specific, like an allowance for interruption. It was just really interesting to see how diverse the feedback was. So I thought I would give you the top 5 mistakes I see teams make when they try to use spikes. So, once again, a spike by definition is time set aside to do something that wasn't originally expected, whether it's additional research or whether it's additional vetting or whether it's additional documentation. Whatever it is, if it's something that's already planned in a sprint and then you have a realization that you have to do something more, the spike is designed to show, and then the way it got its name is in a burn down chart, it would show an increase in the amount of work in a sprint, i.e., new work was inserted, i.e., instead of it burning down, you would see a spike on a chart going up. So that's how it got its original name. So let's get to these top 5 items, because I think these top 5 items are going to be really interesting. So let's start at the bottom. Let's start with number 5. So some teams I find try to execute a spike long before they need to. Now, let me explain. I think sometimes teams start looking way too far ahead of themselves, 6 sprints out, 8 sprints out, and they want to do the spike now instead of allowing for technical analysts, business analysts, functional analysts, marketing analysts, all these other people to do their job and figure out this work and then pass it along during refining meeting or during refinement meeting to the teams. I feel like sometimes we pull the spike in way too early, and it could be A, something we never end up working on, B, the outcome's not fresh. We need new data. Or C, it's just a waste of time when we do it because we spike something out that we may not ever even get to work on. So I know that sounds weird, but that's one of the big issues I see with spikes, where teams just do it way before they need to, or the product owner approves it way before it should be approved. Okay. Number 4, this is probably my biggest one. This one probably should have been number 1. Not defining a clear spike outcome. So one of the things that drives me crazy is when people say, "Yeah, we'll just create a spike. Go research this," and it's completely open ended. There's no clear outcome. I like it when it's go research this for 3 hours, and whatever you come back with, that's going to be the right answer. Or our expectation is that we'll find out these 2 things. What happens is when you make it clear what the consideration is for why we're doing a spike and what the outcome should be, that's when we discover the best data. That's when we get the best information. I think sometimes we do these spikes and we don't define clearly what we're trying to do, and it causes duress. All right, let's go to number 3. When people consider doing spikes before consider reducing the scope. Okay, once again, now you see why the other one wasn't number 1. This one's way more important, right? I always say if you have a consideration where you can extend time or reduce scope, you're a fool if you're not reducing scope. You can always, extend the time later. But if you kick it out and extend the time first, you can't go back and take the time back, darn it, because time doesn't go backwards. It's rather annoying that way. I think that if you understand the concept of limiting WIP and reducing scope, that's going to help you overcome the need for many of the things that you're trying to solve with spikes instead of, yeah. So let's reframe that. What I'm trying to say is it's sometimes it's easier for you just to go ahead and reduce the scope, and the spike will fix itself. You won't need to spike if you reduce the scope. And I think that a lot of times we don't take into consideration, or we don't have the right people on the back end assisting the product owner to do the things they need to do. So a lot of times when I see this, it's a symptom of not having a well-defined backlog. No, it sounds crazy, but those things happen. All right, let's jump up to number 2. Number 2 is using spikes to find out details that you can figure out as you go along. I have one team that literally said, "Oh my goodness, we are going to put spikes on everything. If we have to breathe heavier than normal, we're going to put a spike on it." And what I can tell you is there are some things, just the nature of doing the work, there are some things that you're going to have to figure out as you go. So the spike's not designed for minutia. Spikes are designed to give the team confidence in understanding something or to help them overcome something unknown. Spikes were never designed to be for all the little tiny minutia implementation details. If you're using the spikes for all those details, that means you're just not using them correctly. Okay, here we go. Drum roll. Number one on the list. And this is officially number one. It really is. Performing spikes when there's so many other things that are unclear. If there are so many other unknowns and we did a poor job of refinement, a spike is not going to help you. A spike's not going to bring you to the promised land. A spike's not going to fix what you don't know. And you're not going to learn enough in a simple spike, whether it's a technical spike, functional spike, I don't care what it is. You're not going to learn enough in a short time frame to warrant the spike taking place. The spikes are designed for investigation. Sometimes it's to be a technical solution. Sometimes it's towards a research solution. Sometimes it's towards a usability solution. But the spike should always, 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 under every circumstance, always be time boxed. And a product owner should choose how much time they want to dedicate to figuring those problems out. And if someone comes back and says, hey, I used that time and I didn't find out anything, the product owner can say, you know what, that's fine. It's good enough. I didn't want to spend more budget and more time on that. So we're going to push this back to the stakeholders and see if they can come back with some additional information. So what I'm trying to say is it's a good practice for you to really, really understand how spikes can be used, how they benefit the team, how they assist if you have properly refined items, and how you can leverage this practice that came from extreme programming to help you really capitalize and do the best you can with your work. Because, I think that if we have a well-refined backlog and we're limiting scope, it should be easy for us to do minimal research and figure things out. That's going to do it for this episode. If you have a topic you want us to cover, remember to reach out to us, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.